Good evening. Dear audience of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada, welcome to the show. It is my distinct pleasure to once again welcome all of you to this important webinar event. I'm Dr. Kausar Ahmed, and I have the honor of moderating today's webinar, which marks a significant moment for all of us, the soft launch of Rules of Law on Earth, in short, ROLE, R-O-L-E project. This initiative, supported by Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, aims to address some of the most pressing challenges of our time by promoting the rule of law as a foundation for global peace and justice. The audience, before we embark into our session, let me do the treaty recognition. The Institute is located on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homelands of Métis Nation. We all are promise bound to work together in the true spirit of truth and reconciliation. Dear audience, as we look around the world today, it is impossible to ignore the devastating conflicts that seem to engulf every corner of the globe. The Israel-Hamas and now Hezbollah war has once again brought unbearable sufferings to civilians, while the war in Ukraine rages on with no end in sight, destabilizing Europe and affecting global security. In Sudan, civil strife has led to humanitarian catastrophe, and in Myanmar, ethnic conflicts and military oppression continue to displace millions. These crises, among others, remind us of a disturbing reality. We are perpetually waging wars, but rarely are we waging peace. The Rules of Law on Earth project seeks to change that dynamic. It offers a different approach, one rooted in justice, equity, and the universal application of the rule of law. Unlike many traditional state-centric approaches to conflict resolution, which often fall short, ROLE envisions a collaborative, inclusive model where diverse voices and stakeholders across communities, academic institutions, civil society organizations, and governments work together to build a world where peace is sustainable, not temporary. Dear audience, what makes ROLE truly unique are the four key priority areas it addresses: nuclear disarmament, conflict prevention and resolution, indigenous peoples' rights, eco-justice, and sustainable development. Tonight marks the soft launch of this visionary project, envisioned by our advisor, David Gerald Newman, a Rotarian and peace builder. And our work is only beginning today. We are building toward a grand celebration on November 8th, 2024 at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, where we'll officially kick off this global initiative. That event will bring together key stakeholders from around the world to deepen our commitment to the principles that guide ROLE. We are fortunate to have two esteemed speakers with us tonight. First, we'll hear from David Newman, CRIC's advisor and a key architect of this project. David will share more about the vision and objectives of this initiative and why it is poised to make a lasting impact on global peace-building efforts. Following David, we are honored today to have Dr. Ernest Thyssen, a pioneer in the field of conflict resolution and negotiation technology. Dr. Thyssen will introduce us to Smartsettle, the innovative software he developed to revolutionize the way conflicts might be resolved. Smartsettle embodies many of the principles at the heart of ROLE, providing a fair and efficient tool for achieving agreement through mediation rather than adversarial means. After these insightful presentations, we will open the floor for a moderated question and answer session where you will have the opportunity as an audience, and also David and I will engage directly with Dr. Ernest Tyson and explore the intersections of justice, conflict resolution, and global peace, focusing the use of Smartsettle as a tool. The audience, as we embark on this journey tonight, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for being here and for your commitment to building a more just and peaceful world. Together, through initiatives like ROLE, we are laying the foundation for a future where peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice and resilience for all. So without further ado, it's my pleasure now to welcome David Gerald Newman for his opening remarks about tonight's webinar as well as role. Thank you. David, floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Kauser, thank you so much, not only for the introduction, but for hosting this and for being one of the major creators of the Conflict Research and Resilience Institute Canada, a federally incorporated charitable organization. Its purpose is really founded in education, but education in practical but transformational, realistic kinds of possible changes, which are deemed so often to be impossible. And people like Kauser and myself and Ernest, all coming from different backgrounds, me as a lawyer, Kauser as a soldier and a peacekeeper in the UN Blue Helmet capacities, as a PhD, peace studies scholar, writer, researcher, and a community active leader by example. And Ernest, with his engineering background, his deep knowledge of technology, and the genius which he resulted in the creation of what you're going to hear about tonight. So what brings us together? Well, what brings us together in unity for common cause, the common cause of a worldwide global justice and security system, which we all know is so incredibly, urgently, badly needed, frankly, to not only prevent wars, but to end those that we read about, watch about, talk about, and are subjected to wherever we are in the world, the consequences of this kind of unparalleled kind of violence associated with a risk which is greater than ever before in human history. And that, of course, is the risk of extinction caused by human creations like nuclear weapons, like all of our use of energy resulting in climate change because of a historic accumulation of carbon emissions which continue and are threatening to us. And then, of course, artificial intelligence is yet an untamed, unregulated situation. So I just wanted to put the rule of law in context in ways we all understand it, because law really emerged out of community. It emerged out of, our Western kind of law, emerged out of the commons, out of common people with common problems, which needed a resolution. So that was the basis of common law, which is the basis of the codified law and the common law which exists to this day, and even precedents from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But law is based on values. Law is needed, rules are needed because humans are imperfect. I mean, if we're really honest with ourselves, we all have good and bad within us, and we're struggling all the time to make sure good prevails and negative emotions are controlled, and violence is not a means of resolving disputes. So rules are part of sporting events, they're part of our legal systems, And there's a theoretical rules-based order internationally, but they're not rules that are working, and we can see that. So, and the reasons for them not working are the kinds of deep work, research, and action that we're intending to address with this new role project. Another thing I wanted to add, that, because I said it's important for Ernest's presentation coming up, and that is the legal system and democracy is based on means justifying ends, not ends justifying means. And if you read the wonderful contributions to civilization of Gandhi's and Mandela's and Martin Luther King, all of them believe that you don't, to accomplish an end, do bad things which are inconsistent with the end in mind. So if the end in mind is peace and justice, then we have to, in the process of resolving disputes, do so in ways that are consistent with the objective of sustainable peace and justice. So what we do to demonstrate this is that we have on our logo for role a circle of people holding hands with a scale of justice on one side and a circle in the inner circle of people holding hands. The scales of justice represents what is law and order TV kinds of law. It is the kind of courts that we're all familiar with and we read about, where civil justice and criminal justice is administered. And the adversarial process is the way to get in the door. But what we lawyers have done over years is moved adversarial situations into alternative methods for resolving problems by agreement, because they can do it not as a third party imposing a judgment, but they can do it by virtue of agreement, facilitated, guided. And one of the innovative tools, a pioneering tool, is that of Smartsettle, which is an example of a tool which can complement any in-person mediative participation to bring the parties, and multiple parties, because the problem with our legal system too often is that you have a plaintiff and defendant, yet all kinds of other people are affected. So the beauty is when you get into the other stream, a parallel stream to the adversarial process, resolutions that are likely to be sustainable, better that way, because there's not a winner and a loser. There's not the all of the cost and the pain that goes with an adversarial process. The other point I wanted to make is that when we decide what to do in terms of accepting rules, making choices, making decisions, we as humans have the capacity to apply values. And the values are the kinds of values that can be dealt with sometimes far better in an alternative to the adversarial process. I finally wanted to say that all of the multi-generational problems that lead to the kind of situations we're in the world now, and I'm talking about multi-generational hatred, multi-generational trauma, those kinds of situations we're dealing with in another kind of process, and that's the truth and reconciliation process. So there's a whole variety of different ways to address the great need and hunger that we have for worldwide justice, personal justice, and a global security, which has the capacity to engender the kind of accountability will prevent as well as end wars, violent conflict, genocides, war crimes, violent aggression, and so forth. So I now turn it over to Ernest and allow Kauser to introduce him further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for your opening remarks. The audience, it's an honor to read the bio of Dr. Ernest Tyson, our guest tonight. And before he takes stage, so I'll briefly go over his past activities. And of course, in between his presentation, we'll have that special video clip, what is called Gaza Marshall Plan. So Dr. Ernest Tyson has dedicated his career to advancing decision-making processes that foster collaboration and lasting peace. As president of Smartsettle Resolutions and ICANN Systems Incorporated, he has revolutionized formal negotiation systems, enabling stakeholders across the globe to find optimal, fair solutions to complex conflicts. Tyson's journey with Smartsettle can be traced back to the 1980s when he served as a volunteer irrigation engineer in Nepal with Mennonite Central Committee. Successful negotiation resulting in the Andhi Khola project benefiting even the landless set a precedent for peacemaking in resource management. His efforts contributed to the project team earning the UNESCO IHA Blue Planet Prize. This formative and life-changing experience continues to shape his vision for peace building through equitable decision-making. Holding a PhD from Cornell University in water resource systems planning and analysis, Tyson has developed innovative solutions for complex negotiations. He's maximized the minimum gain method praised by Harvard Professor Emeritus Howard Raifa as cutting edge and preferred over a similar algorithm invented by Nobel laureate John Nash, forms the foundation of Smartsettle's world-renowned collaboration systems. Smartsettle Infinity, Tyson's flagship multi-party negotiation platform, has been successfully applied in thousands of cases, both live and simulated, ranging from small claims, family and business disputes, to collective bargaining, procurement, and international treaties. It provides decision makers in peace building and sustainable development with a powerful tool for resolving conflicts. His systems are designed to bring diverse parties together through a secure, neutral site, ensuring that all stakeholders' voices are heard and considered in reaching fair and sustainable solutions. As a strategic leader and peace builder, Tyson remains committed to empowering communities and nations to move forward beyond conflict through innovative and secure collaboration tools, making him a leading figure in the global pursuit of peace and sustainable development. So that is all from our side to formally introduce Dr. Tyson. Dr. Tyson, floor is yours. You can go ahead, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kauser. And it's indeed an honor and a privilege to be a part of your webinar today. Thank you very much for inviting me. And so this is an exciting time. It's an exciting project. David Newman has explained the rule of law project, and I'll do all I can to support and promote that. Let's make that very successful. If I would pick out one thing from what David said, the idea of this rule of law project, one thing that's important is to convert people from adversarial methods to collaborative methods. And, so it's maybe not so bad in the courtroom, maybe it is, but, in the international courtroom, it just doesn't seem to be working at all. I mean, well, how if it was working, they would be preventing those terrible wars that are happening at the moment, and we have to change that. So with Smartsettle, we specialize in collaboration systems. So designed to do exactly that, convert adversaries into collaborators. And what we aim to deliver is optimized consensus. And that means better outcomes in a shorter time. And, you know, in international conflicts, this makes all the difference in escaping the dangerous Nash equilibrium that the world is in right now. And it's really frightening as to what could happen. We are, you know, the doomsday clock is the closest it ever is to midnight. And it's urgent that we do something about that. So if you want me to say anything more about any of this, Kaiser or David, you can ask me some questions now, or we can play the video and ask questions later. It's up to you.
Yeah, so we'll play the video now, Ernest, if you want, and then we'll jump into Q&A session, if that is all right with you.
Perfect.
The audience, we are going to watch, I would say, a little shortened version of the video that is available in Dr. Ernest's website, Smartsettle. So we're going to play it because this is a very comprehensive idea how it works actually, and it would work. So have a look on this video. And as I said, it is available in the in full length, 18 minutes and 30 seconds. And you can watch at your time and find out how effective it is. So we are now going to play the video.
The community has long called for a ceasefire in Gaza, but true peace remains elusive. Even if a ceasefire is achieved, one critical question remains: how long will it last? Our vision for Gaza extends beyond temporary fixes. It centers on a comprehensive Gaza Marshall Plan that fosters lasting peace through collaborative, inclusive decision-making. Smartsettle Infinity brings all parties to the table, ensuring that every voice is heard and leading to a truly optimal and sustainable consensus. This video will use a simulation of a hypothetical negotiation to illustrate such an approach, where we are not just aiming for an agreement, but for a transformative process where trust is built and conflict resolution becomes sustainable. Instead of waging war, we must focus on waging peace and building collaboration. At the heart of this approach is Smartsettle Infinity, which embraces the vision of conflict resolution through peaceful, collaborative, and intelligent methods. If you ask someone how the war in the Middle East could end, they might predict that Israel will win on the right side of this graph. Israel is obviously the stronger party, and the destruction that is happening is primarily on Hamas territory. Others will say that Hamas will win because of the international support they have generated and accusations of genocide. Yet this violence extends far beyond the conflict between Israel and Hamas, entangling many sides, all of which are losing, no matter how you look at it. Other paths to peace are represented by this orange arrow. There is discussion of a Gaza Marshall Plan, yet bringing all the necessary parties to the table is daunting. Without the right approach, we risk remaining trapped in a dangerous Nash equilibrium. Describing the Nash equilibrium as a deadlock where no one wins, won John Nash a Nobel Prize. But he didn't stop there. Nash also devised a way to escape this deadlock, known as maximize the utility product. This algorithm reshapes the problem from a win-lose dynamic into a multi-dimensional approach, where it's possible for all sides to achieve gains. Assuming only two parties, we're now looking at the problem in two-dimensional satisfaction space. We've relabeled Hamas as Palestine to represent a bigger picture. They want to be at the top of this graph, while Israel wants to be at the right side. Now, it's no longer true that one party must lose when the other one gains. Smartsettle employs a similar algorithm, maximize the minimum gain, which some experts consider as a superior alternative to Nash's method. Another name for this methodology is integrative negotiation. It applies to negotiations among any number of parties, but this algorithm is not enough. Nash also prescribed collaboration as part of the solution, though he didn't explain how to bring parties together. In this presentation, I'm going to describe a methodology for collaboration facilitated by Smartsettle Infinity, but I'll also be the first to admit that even if we think we know how to do it, this will be no easy task. So, who are the parties we need to bring on board to negotiate a Gaza Marshall Plan? There are many. For the sake of this simulation, we've organized the stakeholders into 6 groups. The Smartsettle collaboration process provides a groundbreaking platform for all parties, transforming traditional negotiation into a dynamic, cooperative experience. It starts with all these parties working together to create a single negotiating framework. This framework is like the final agreement, except for blanks representing issues still to be negotiated. With the help of wise mediators and skilled facilitators assisted by AI, collaborative stakeholders can build a single negotiating framework. This process redirects criticism away from the other parties and toward the single negotiating framework and mediators. This helps to reinforce collaboration, and the result is a comprehensive framework in short order. Once the parties have crafted a version of the single negotiating framework that reflects shared interests, they can begin modeling the problem within Smartsettle Infinity. This collaborative process helps the framework evolve through multiple iterations, ultimately leading to the best possible outcome. In this case, a comprehensive Gaza Marshall Plan. Next, I'm going to describe in more detail the process depicted on this diagram. Building a single negotiating framework is the beginning of the modeling phase. This is a time to build and/or strengthen relationships. The parties can be physically face-to-face or meet virtually from opposite sides of the earth. The objective of this phase is for each stakeholder to bring all their issues to the table. No bargaining or formal exchange of proposals takes place during this phase, but the discussion will identify the range of possible outcomes on each issue. In our simulation, the 6 groups identified 10 broad categories that would include everything they care about in a comprehensive Gaza Marshall Plan. We're not going to take time to discuss these in any detail, but let's focus for a moment on the commitment to ceasefire. In the ceasefire category, the parties found significant common ground. They also identified 6 key options to consider moving forward. In a real negotiation, there would be much more detail than shown here. Each option is associated with a budget in billions of dollars. The simulation assumes stakeholders share costs in proportion to their GDP. For every dollar contributed by the Palestinians, the other parties contribute proportionally more. As the single negotiating framework evolves, the parties begin to model that framework within Infinity, which includes a preference representation for each of them. Each party does that separately. Any number of parties can be accommodated this way until they're all satisfied with the single negotiating framework and how it's modeled within Smartsettle Infinity. This now represents a very well-defined problem, and as John Dewey said, a well-defined problem is already half solved. Now we're going to simulate solving the other half of the problem, reaching an optimal consensus among 6 parties while their communication is facilitated within the Smartsettle Infinity interface. This is the private point of view of the Palestinian leadership. The other 5 parties are being played by a robot. In a real-life negotiation, the Palestinians would work with skilled facilitators to model their preferences within Infinity. In this simulation, we simulated that process by recruiting AI to help us determine their preferences and those of each of the other 6 parties from information on the internet. Each party's preferences are kept confidential by the system, known only ever to that party, their facilitators, and to Smartsettle at an invisible and secure neutral site. The simulation generates a unique outcome, shaped by the collective preferences of all stakeholders. However, the key lesson here isn't the outcome. but the consensus-building process itself. The negotiating range on each issue here is oriented so that the most preferred options to the Palestinians are on the right-hand side. The entire list is in order of preference, from most important at the top to least important at the bottom. With the Palestinians required to pay only a relatively small portion of the costs, the importance of the cost issue is quite low, although not insignificant. The non-linear shape of the curve indicates that it becomes more difficult for the Palestinians to pay as the amount increases. Palestinians have assigned one importance point to the negotiating range from 0 to 100 million. This establishes the importance scale for all the other issues. The most important issue, worth 60 points, is prisoner exchange and refugee resettlement. This satisfaction graph shows 6 alternative outcomes, ranked by the Palestinian leadership. Their least preferred option, scoring -20, is international support resettlement. Several other options are much better, with the most preferred option being simultaneous complete release at 40 points. Recognition of sovereign borders and reconstruction and economic revival are also among the most important issues. Commitment to ceasefire, of course, is also very important, but this issue is assigned fewer points here because the negotiations have already assumed that a ceasefire will happen. The only issue about a ceasefire is how it will be implemented. There are 6 options in order of importance, from phased peace implementation to immediate full ceasefire. On the right side is where the Palestinians keep track of alternative outcomes. There is nothing yet on the table for all parties to see. The Palestinian leadership have created 5 private reference packages to help them understand their own preferences, and also for use in the bargaining phase about to begin. The ratings of these packages are determined by the individual importances assigned to the options that make up the package. The package least preferred to the Palestinians, worth only 7 points, is named status quo. An outcome at this end of the scale would be totally unacceptable. The Palestinians will walk away from the table before accepting anything worse than their walkaway package. Their goal is a solution worth at least 180 points. The package named Target would be quite acceptable to the Palestinians. However, the Palestinians decide to start by proposing something more optimistic. When they do so, the optimistic proposals of the other parties also appear on the table. Among those proposals, the one submitted by people at the heart of the conflict is most preferred, and the Palestinians readily accept that package. Their acceptance is indicated by a secret yellow dot. Other parties are unaware that the Palestinians have accepted Package 3. The Palestinians also accept Package 4. There are more packages acceptable to the Palestinians, but before accepting any of those, the Palestinians ask Smartsettle for a suggestion. Several suggestions appear. These packages not only fill in the gaps between the proposals, but are designed to be semi-optimal and draw the parties toward an optimal consensus. Before dealing with these suggestions, they accept Package 5. Among the suggestions generated by Smartsettle, Suggestion 15 looks most interesting and is accepted by the Palestinians. Smartsettle will declare an agreement if, at the end of a session, all parties have accepted the same package. Unfortunately, no agreement is reached in Session 1. In Session 2, the Palestinians decide to propose their concession package, and also accept a few other packages. No agreement is reached in Session 2. In Session 3, the Palestinians decide to put their target package on the table, but they do so in secret.
So the audience, I just wanted to break the continuity of the video clip because we have its founder with us, and I think it's worth engaging him now and know more about the the wider scope of the use of the software itself. And the video is available in the website, as I mentioned. Again, I'm repeating because it's really worthwhile to watch the full length so that if you're interested, you can understand its interface and its potentials. So the audience, as promised, we'll start our question and answer session now. David, you want to go first? Go ahead, sir.
Sure. I anticipate having many friends in Israel and in Palestine and in Winnipeg whose origins are there or have families there. There's an enormous amount of trauma. And the same would, and sensitivity and distrust and anger and multi-generational impacts I spoke of earlier. And the same applies, of course, in the Russia-Ukraine situation. And everywhere else there's conflict and long histories. And usually there are long histories. So what really intrigues me about what you offer as a tool is that you could bring together people that have good minds, good hearts, and the capacity to risk the emotional burden of engaging in discussions without being the immediate combatant parties. So you could have people in the region, and I happen to be a Rotarian, so there's Rotarians in Palestine, there's Rotarians in Israel, and they're wonderful people. So people like that, people who are academics, people who are the education people, women, children, could have agents representing them at a multi-stakeholder version of what you describe. And it seems to me, can you use that in a simulation with the not immediate parties embroiled in it to come up with options which could then be shared with the broad public, and in this case, the whole world is interested in a solution here. Is that a use of the tool that your genius has created?
Dr. Ernest, microphone. Yeah.
Well, you know what happens is when somebody watches a video showing a simulation of how Smartsettle works, they think, well, okay, that's what it's designed to do, to tackle this particular conflict situation. And often it's difficult to take that and say, well, it could also be applied to that situation or this one or the other one. And the short answer to your question, David, is yes. Any situation where you have multiple decision makers with conflicting objectives and they are willing to participate in a collaborative process where they will reach a formal outcome, we can apply Smartsettle to that process. So if we can frame the problem, model it in that way, then yes, we can apply it to what you're saying.
Thank you. My other question, Ernest, is what other, we have other conflicts around the world. We have conflicts in Myanmar, we got Russia, Ukraine, India, Pakistan, and have you modeled this in those kinds of situations?
Well, interesting that you should ask that particular question, because we have actually, been working on this for several years. If you look back half a dozen years, we weren't very involved in applications to peacemaking, but in the last few years, we have, shifted our focus. I guess when I got involved, this started particularly when I started getting involved more with Rotarians, and uh, so I was listening to them and attending some of the groups where they're interested in ridding the world of nuclear weapons. So I thought, well, how are we going to do this? It's going to be pretty hard to get those 9 holdout countries to give up their nuclear weapons, and the only way they're going to do that is all together at once. And so that calls for a global negotiation between all of those countries so we can come to a consensus. And we have to include more than just nuclear weapons, because there needs to be an incentive, and the incentive will be how they can collaborate on all kinds of other things that will benefit all of those countries, and the amount that they will save on the money they're putting into war and preparing for war is just enormous. And you'll see that if you watch the rest of the video. So anyways, I said, well, okay, let's see if we can do a multi-party negotiation like that. And I asked around a little bit, where should we start? Okay, how about India versus Pakistan? They're not fighting right now, but they both have nuclear weapons, right? And there's a conflict that's troubling them, in Kashmir. It's been troubling them for a long time, and there's fighting that continues on. So I said, well, let's see if we can model that. So we put a model together, and it's like redoing the Indus Waters treaties. So if you could tell from my bio that my background is in water resource systems planning and analysis, and so that fit very well with my background there to deal with the water issues, and also to the other conflicts there in Kashmir. And if you look on our website, you can find that video too. You just search for Kashland. But we didn't stop there. We also introduced issues of climate change and both of those countries getting rid of their nuclear weapons. And I'd like to just try this for real. We were looking for an opportunity to scale that up. So anyways, from there, then the Ukraine war started, and one of my investors said, look, we've got to do this before it gets worse. And he said, I'll put in some money to get it started. And we switched, and we created a video there. You can find that video on our website as well. And then after that, the Gaza war started, and so that's the video that you'll see if you watch the rest of what Kaiser showed you today. Okay, so I've gone on and on. Maybe I've said enough to the answer.
Yeah, that's terrific, terrifically helpful to me, and I'm sure to viewers. But Kaiser should ask the next question, because I raised Myanmar, and he's a person that has written books and chapters and edited publications and researched the whole Rohingya situation there, which is really part of, the conflict there is so complex. You got military, you got Buddhist religion, you got indigenous traditional, you got Muslim, you have indigenous peoples, you got resource competition, and you've got ongoing violence within that country, and geopolitics involved, other countries involved, and everything else. So, Kaiser, you ask the next questions with your background.
Thank you, David. No, I will just ask a complimentary. I would rather request a comment from Dr. Ernest, because I think David has laid the context on Myanmar conflict. It is, I think, very complex in a sense that geopolitics is very much influenced the conflict, and it has reached to a point now that it is all about a civil war. And I'm going to only ask, request a comment, as I said, that we just submitted a proposal to Global Affairs Canada just 3 days ago, and where I sought help from Dr. Ernest about using Smartsettle to the end of having a negotiated, dialogue. And in that proposal, actually, what we said is that we would like to actually use track two diplomacy as a model, which occurred in Oslo peace process, and also we have seen in Aceh peace process in Indonesia. So this track two dialogue process lays the background, brings the conflicting parties together, and especially in Aceh peace process, Norwegian CIMIC, if I am not wrong, the name of the NGO that actually spearheaded this dialogue, which was actually a part, supported by Norwegian the then Prime Minister. So what they did is they brought these parties together and in a single platform, and they started dialoguing, and eventually we have seen the end of decades-long ethnic war in Aceh province of Indonesia. So, Dr. Ernest, my question to you, so at what point do you think this kind of multiple stakeholders can actually can be brought into into using these tools or platform? Because in Myanmar, in one side there is military government, on the other side ethnic armed groups. They are semi-military or paramilitary group, and in between you have ethnic groups and others. So how do you really see these parties can learn using this software, or you think that they should be trained through some organizations like yours and ours?
Well, okay, the last point first. Training is critical, but we can actually train people on the job. So, we've done that, in many places. It's very effective, and in fact, it's more effective to actually train on the job. And part of our training is to, we can't jump in right away and hope to solve it, and we can't even promise to solve it in the end. But we can try, and we have to try. You miss all the shots you don't take, so we have to try. And you say, when should we get involved? And that's the earlier the better. You've already been talking about situations where they're starting to dialogue, and the Smartsettle process involves people starting to dialogue at the beginning. You saw part of the simulation today, and it didn't emphasize that part that comes before that, creating that single negotiating framework. Well, we said it up to that point, the problem is already half solved, maybe more than half solved, actually. I was just quoting Dewey there with saying half, because creating that framework will involve, is no trivial task. It will involve a lot of dialogue, but the parties that are doing it have to go through some simulation, understand how the process works, so they don't get involved in all these arguments while they're doing it. They have to realize that, look, let's look for common ground and document that common ground. And when there's something we don't agree to, put it off to the side. We're going to deal with that later. Of course, we want to model it and define the options, but don't get into heated arguments that just is bad for relationships. This is supposed to be a relationship building exercise, building that single negotiating framework. So the short answer to your question is, the sooner the better, because we have to start the healing process as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A quick question here with regards to United Nations peacekeeping operations. As a former UN peacekeeper myself in MINURSO, Western Sahara, I'm curious to know your insights about using this tool in the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations. And particularly, I'm talking about peacekeeping operations, although UN has a number of peacebuilding operations too, but PKOs are particularly on ground. For example, we see the UNIFIL, which again got under international attention because of the number of events developing there. So UNIFIL is in place since 1978, although the mandate is monitoring and other things. But how best this software can be used in terms of dealing with conflict and bringing parties at least to a certain stage, so that they don't engage in or escalated violence.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been talking about the application to places where there is, serious violence happening, but really much better is to apply the methodology in conflict situations before they develop into a conflict. We have to engage. I mean, if they're starting to have difficulties with different things that might get, into a conflict, let's engage them into collaborative dialogue and have them participate in this process before it gets so bad. Like, early intervention is the best approach. And I should also say, the UN is involved in, peacekeeping and peace building all over the world, in many places where there are not wars right now. And that's where we really should be focusing. Of course, we got to get rid of the current wars; they're really dangerous. But at the same time, we can be everywhere, and the only thing that's preventing this, it's totally scalable. All we have to do is train people. I'll be the first to admit that we only have a small group of people that are trained to use the software right now. So that's the urgent need, to train a larger number of people and put them to work everywhere. That's what I'd like to see.
Thank you. David, back to you. And I think we are nearing the end of our webinar.
You're muted, David.
David, you're muted. So
you just
the
got
audience,
about 3 minutes, don't you?
Yeah, we are actually end of our webinar session as planned. But let me request David to say a few words and even a question if he wishes to
Okay,
Dr.
really quickly, short one. Does the multi-stakeholder mean that you could have an agent at the table effectively representing future generations, an agent representing females, an agent representing existing children, an agent representing the environment, and all of the implications?
Right. So there's no theoretical limit to the number of parties you could have at the table. And if you look at that simulation that we started with, you'll notice that one of the parties, deliberately we put in there people at the heart of the conflict, but we lump them all together as just one group, just to keep it simple enough for the simulation. It's just a matter of putting more powerful computers on this, and we can represent all of those groups and just draw them all into a consensus and have them all input into the final solution. Yes, that is theoretically possible. It just means more computing power.
Excellent. My really important comment, I just think of Smartsettle, if it had been used when all the tanks were lined up outside Ukraine, and rationality of the whole world, and agents representing the people I talked about, how many lives could have been saved with that kind of approach. I conclude by saying one of the biggest impediments we have to doing this is going to be the biggest challenge for rules of law on Earth. And that is veto power at the United Nations, of the 5 empires that control the world. And those same empires are the ones that have the right to nuclear weapons under the Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1970. Mm-hmm. So that's the big challenge that we got to work at. And maybe those kinds of discussions can take place using Smartsettle as well. Kauser, over to you.
Thank you. Dr. Ernest, before we formally conclude our session today, what are your hopes for the future with regards to the use of this software? Because I think our audience will be very much keen to learn the potentials of these tools and how best this could be used.
Yeah, well, I think my hopes for the future have been uh, expressed very well during this whole seminar, and to promote peace and actually uh, offer a process. So I have to emphasize, when you look at the video, don't look at the outcome. We don't know what the outcome is going to be, but look at the process. Can this process work? So first of all, we need the right decision makers to say, look, it's worthwhile trying this process on the most difficult problems on Earth. I'd like to see it not only stop wars, but also make a difference in terms of decisions on what to do about climate change and other things that are also very serious problems today on Earth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ernest, for being with us this evening. The audience, before we really say goodbye, a couple of thoughts that I think came out of this webinar today. As Dr. Ernest, founder of this software, very rightly said that do not be very much tied down with the outcome of the event or the simulation that is being done. Rather, focus on the process. And I think this is the key message from our today's webinar, that Smartsettle is one of the tools that the founder explained quite extensively today, that the way it draws various outcomes. And of course, if you remember David's initial remarks, that why the rules are important, or why the process is important, because it draws from the adversarial position to the collaborative position. It brings people or the parties together and move them from this side to collaborative side. So these are important takeaways from today's webinar. And the audience also would like to share with you, Dr. Ernest will be here in Winnipeg from 5th of November till 8th. And on 8th, you will definitely find him in Canadian Museum for Human Rights, where the Rules of Law on Art project will be inaugurated by our team and led by David Newman. So you can always interact with him in person if you have more interest about the software and about his future plan. So with these notes, the audience, let me say once again, the major point that I would like to appeal to global community, that wars are possibly going to occur again and again. But what we need to do now is to understand how to wage peace, because I think we are one of the few groups today, including today and in the future, we are talking about peace. Look at the title of the video that Dr. Ernest Tyson's team has put up, Marshall Plan, because at the end, we need to reconstruct that area, bring people back, and start a new life for all of them, all parties involved in the conflict. So with these sobering thoughts, let's say goodbye and stay well. And don't forget to meet Dr. Ernest in Winnipeg on 8th of November. Till then, good night and see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.